Good morning, everybody. My name is Gail Lee, and I'm the president of the board of Aging Advantage. We're a nonprofit here in the St. Louis area that helps our elderly in the community, and we're doing these education classes to kind of help people understand the resources. And a lot of people are still having some effects really from the pandemic in terms of social isolation and just figuring everything out. So that these are um, funded partially from the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging to help people, with those kind of issues. And today we have Chet, who's with Oasis Senior Advisors, who kind of works on a lot of different issues on housing and all kinds of stuff. This very complicated process that everybody tries to go through in terms of where should I live? What can I do? What's out there? And he's going to share with us today about that. And I think he has a presentation that he's going to share his screen and get going with that.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, probably about a year ago, I gave a general presentation about the different types of senior living and how people
Hmm.
might think about whether or not senior living is right for them. So you can go back through the archives to find that on Aging Advantage, but I also give it through the Oasis Lifelong Learning Institute, and I have a session coming up in mid-March if you're interested in that. But this one is specifically about paying for senior living, which is something that people are very concerned about. But it's good to have the information so that you can plan ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a really big key with it all, Chad, is even with either, you know, knowing where to go and what to do and how you're going to pay for it. A lot of times people are waiting and it's in an emergency and it's hard to decide, well, where
Yep.
am I even going to go? But let alone how am I going to pay for it? And inevitably, as a social worker for years and years,
Hmm.
you get that call on a Friday afternoon from a family and they're like, yeah, my parents getting discharged from the hospital. It's Friday afternoon and they don't know where they're going and how they're paying, and I just found out Medicare is really not going to pay for it. And, that whole scenario. So it's really important to really understand. And I think know when it's not an emergency. All these different communities are so different. And I was just talking to someone this week, and it was like they kind of want to have both parents sort of move, but the one is really independent and the one is not. And so, like, trying to figure out a facility maybe that they could both be in, and then how are you going to pay for it? And
Yeah,
that's, yeah. So,
exactly. Yeah, I will mention in my presentation multiple times, have a plan. And you all being here, watching the presentation, thinking about it, and that is a great first step. So,
hmm hmm
share my screen. Um,
Yeah, and why Chet's getting that pulled up is just with the Aging Advantage. Like I said, we help in all these different scenarios, and people can call, and we can. Um, it's a really important part of linking to these different resources, and just really helping people figure out uh, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it.
yep.
Okay,
So
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. I'm Chet Cain. I'm the owner of Oasis Senior Advisors St. Louis. I help connect people, caregivers and seniors free of charge with senior living options. And this is my presentation, Paying for Senior Living. So I will quickly go through community types and funding types. Um, um, you know, with the communities, I give much more in-depth presentations on this subject. And with the funding, I'm not a financial advisor, so I will give you a bit of an overview, but you may need to go to a financial professional to get the real details that are applicable to your situation. I will go through costs in the St. Louis area for the different types of senior living, And then I will talk about various scenarios, comparing staying at home, going to senior living, and other scenarios that may help you kind of um, come up with a bit of a decision making situation where you stay home under certain conditions, and then maybe consider senior living if certain things arise in your life. So, why do people consider senior living? Uh, they can be in two major buckets. One is you have challenges at home. Your health isn't ideal. You have mobility issues. You need some sort of care, help doing things around the house, or you have some sort of life change. Friends move away, a spouse passes away, something else may push you towards, hey, being at home isn't working anymore, or, again, a health downturn. But also, some seniors look to senior living for a quality of life. They want simplicity, security, safety, um, you know, uh, sh showers that are more accessible and have grab bars and um, um, having a pull cord nearby in case you have a fall. There's support. You can call the front desk in a senior living community and get help sorting something out. There's the community itself. You will be around peers and people who are, um, in some ways, like you and doing similar things. And some people talk about not wanting to be a burden to their family or some other caregiver, and they choose senior living. Like Gail said, like I'm going to say a number of times, have a plan. Senior living isn't for everybody. I'm not trying to sell everybody in the St. Louis, all the seniors in the St. Louis area to move into senior living. There's not enough places for that. Uh, but have a plan. Know what you think you want to do. Um, Ask for help. Ask a professional, whether they're financial, whether they're a senior advisor like myself, friends and family, neighbors who have gone through and considered senior living or helped a loved one move into senior living. And don't wait for a crisis because it will limit your options and it will put a burden and a lot of stress on yourself and the folks around you. So, quickly, what are the types of senior living? Things have changed a lot since the 1980s, um, and it is not just um, nursing homes or old age homes anymore. Again, senior living isn't for everybody, but there's a lot of options out there for different situations and different types of people that you should consider. The main buckets of senior living. The first one is independent living, where you don't need much help. You have an apartment, you're part of a community. There may be some meals, but you still have a full kitchen. Um, you, a lot of folks, some people will still have their cars. They'll still go out and be part of the community um, in general, as the name suggests. Then there's assisted living. You need a bit more help. You, um, they assisted living places provide 3 meals a day. They do more cleaning. They do your laundry, um, and they help you with um, certain things, maybe bathing or getting around or getting up and out of bed, um, and into a wheelchair or onto a walker or whatever. That's what assisted living is intended for. A specialized version of assisted living is for those folks who have moderate to more advanced dementia, and that is memory care. And oftentimes, memory care is a part of an assisted living community, or there are some standalone memory care buildings here in the St. Louis area. And then For folks who have very acute medical needs, they need a lot of help throughout the day. There is skilled nursing. Um, and that can either be a short-term thing where you need skilled nursing for recovery after a hospitalization, and that would be a rehabilitation version. Or some folks need long-term care um, of the skilled nursing type. Maybe they've had a stroke and they can't walk around very at almost at all anymore, and they need somebody around throughout the day and night to help them out. Another option that a lot of people aren't aware of is respite care, where you can stay in an assisted living or an independent living community for a few weeks to a month. And um, whether it's to give your caregiver a break, allow them to go on that long vacation, prep for a wedding, um, or you just need a little more time after rehab before you can really start doing your own laundry and taking care of your house to the level that you want to. You can stay in a, a senior community for a short period of time. So, um, where do most people um, get the funds to pay for senior living? Um, most people will immediately think of retirement income and savings, whether it's what you've saved, you've put into a retirement account, um, whether it's your Social Security income or you have some sort of pension. And that is pretty reliable month to month sort of income. Um, but then there's other aspects, sources of income that people who can private pay for senior living will draw upon. One option is VA benefits, um, um, namely the aid and attendance benefit. It is available for qualifying wartime veterans or their surviving spouses, their current or surviving spouses who need help with any of daily activities, um, mobility, bathing, that sort of thing. And a lot of people think you have to have served on the front line in a war zone, and you just need to have supported the war effort. So, Korea, Vietnam, and the more recent conflicts all will qualify. Um, in order to qualify for aid and attendance, there is an income level and a certain amount of medical expenses that are needed. Um, um, and but folks with moderate levels of income may qualify when they have quite a bit of medical expense. So it's something to supplement your ability to pay for assisted or skilled nursing. Some of the other sources, again, I will just run through them. Um, the details you need to get from a uh, a, a financial advisor who really knows their stuff. Long-term care insurance. This is something that most people would have gotten in middle age, um, but there's some policies that you can get later in life where it will pay for um, a daily rate for assisted or memory care or long skilled nursing care, um, and either for a term for 5, 10, or whatever years, or pay out a certain maximum amount. Um, some people don't realize that there are ways to access your life insurance before you pass away, and that may be a an option to get the finances you need for long-term care. And there's also life insurance annuities that um, can help you out. A lot of people will think of real estate and the equity in your home as an important source of assets that you might use to pay for senior living. In addition, if you have um, a shorter term need, there are reverse mortgages that are federally um, protected um, and insured, or bridge loans that can access the equity in your home that will allow you to get your home up to get renovations done, get it up to a level so that you can maximize um, the value when you sell the home. A lot of people believe that Medicare will help cover skilled nursing or long-term care. It does not. That is a common misconception. It is the Medicaid program that can cover here in Missouri that can cover skilled nursing. Um, and if you meet a financial need or have qualify for a disability, Medicaid might be an option. Um, uh, but it would only cover skilled nursing. It will not cover those other types of assisted or independent living. So, what does it actually cost? This is the scary part. But like Gail said, it is so important to have a plan and do your homework. So that's why you're here, to think about it and to know what's really going on, and don't leave it to the last minute. I'm going to reiterate, get some help from legal folks. If you need estate planning, even if you don't have many assets, an estate plan might be helpful. Um, Go to an insurance advisor or some other financial advisor to work out what your budget is, what you can afford, and how you're going to um, manage care when you need it. Um, doing Trying to do all of this on your own might cost you in the long run. People can make financial mistakes, make decisions about care, um, and might end up paying a lot more. So just do your homework. So, um, just to reiterate, independent living is when you have few or little care needs in order to get around. Um, you and even if you're living in independent living and have some care needs, you can supplement your care with bringing in a home help agency or have physical therapy and occupational therapy. Most of the independent living places will have um, a room where you can have those sorts of therapies if you need them. Um, the price will completely depend on the square footage you're looking at, the number of bedrooms, and the general amenities of the independent living place. Some of them are quite basic, but then some of the senior living communities in the St. Louis area can have a very high-end luxury resort feel. And obviously, you'll pay more for the high-end luxury type places. It's whatever you feel comfortable with and can afford and expect for your later years. All of the independent living places will have full kitchens because they will only serve certain meals, one, maybe two meals a day. And so you'll be still be cooking. Um, you'll be doing, they might do a little light cleaning. You'll be doing your own laundry. There'll be laundry facilities in your apartment or down the hall. But there will be activities and outings and that sort of thing in the community. For each of the types of senior living, I give a kind of expected average sort of time that most people who move into a community will stay there. But the odd thing with independent living is it varies so much. Um, I there's at least one community I know that was built a bit about 30 years ago, and somebody is living there still that moved in basically during the first year of operation. So some people will live in independent living and they will never need to move out. And there are programs and considerations for a lot of independent living communities to make sure that you can stay there as long as possible. But some people, don't stay in independent very long. They have a sudden health downturn or, something happens. So, what is the actual price? Um, for a standard independent living place where you're just paying a month to month situation, it's fairly all inclusive, a meal, all of your utilities and maintenance and all of that sort of stuff is wrapped in. Certain communities, those communities are usually 62 plus. Um, but 55 plus active senior communities tend not to be all inclusive that and you have to pay your own utilities separately. But for independent living, there is sometimes a community fee, a one-time non-refundable fee that you use to put in the pool of money to make sure that the van's working and repairs get done and that sort of thing. And it's usually in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,500, but it can be up to $3,500. So that is a consideration. But once you move in, then you will have a monthly rent or some payment. They'll have different terms for this, but commonly for independent living, a uh, a studio the might be $2,500 a month, um, and then there are places out there that are high end and there's luxury 3 bedroom 3 baths that you could pay $1,200 a month. But that's there's not many of those. Um Another option is what's either called a buy-in, where you buy in to just one level of care or one um, building, um, or a CCRC, a continuum care retirement community, where you buy into a whole complex, a whole um, continuum of care, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing, and you buy in as independent, and then you have the right to access assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing if you need that. Um, with a buy-in, you'll buy into the community. It's like a insurance policy or a buying a condo. You will pay a large fee, um, maybe $1,500 all the way up, depending on the program, whether you get some part or none of your money back when you move out or pass away. Um, but with the buy-in, one advantage, besides being able to access certain uh, other levels of care, is that your rent will be much lower. And some people like the stability and the ability to budget ahead by having that sorted out with the buy-in or the CCRC model. Um, the only other option for independent type folks is government subsidized housing or HUD housing. There are senior apartment buildings that will provide an apartment. You'll have to you might have utilities included, and there might be a few activities, but there are income or asset limits in order to qualify to move into those subsidized housing communities. Um, and your rent will end up being, uh, depending on the program, a percentage of your monthly income, such as your Social Security. Now, moving on to assisted living. Again, you need some help um, trying to stay independent, and you need some help with meals, cleaning, laundry, and probably something else, bathing, mobility, transferring, toileting, incontinence, or whatever. You need a bit more help, but you're doing okay. Um, with assisted living, there's more staff involved. So as a result, you will be paying for your apartment plus that additional staff. So the price will be higher. With assisted living, they'll almost almost universally be 3 meals a day. You'll have a care plan, and there'll be weekly or bi-weekly cleaning and laundry. You probably won't have a full kitchen because you'll be dining 3 times a day. How long should someone budget for if you need assisted living? The national average is a few years. Um, um, you know, frequently people are a little more frail, and they may not stay in assisted living. They may pass away. They may need memory care or skilled nursing in the future. But some people do live in assisted living much longer than a few years. So think about that as a potential situation. And moving into assisted living um, may improve your health because you have better diet, more activities, and that sort of thing. And it may prevent further decline. So, how much could you expect to pay for assisted living? Monthly rents in around St. Louis are for a studio or 1 bedroom will probably run you about $5,000 to $8,000 a month. So it's uh, quite a bit more than independent living. And then if there's a few places that have 2 bedroom assisted living apartments, and those will be a bit more. And those are usually for couples. Um, some places, and those are for the all-inclusive, that regardless of the level of care you need, if you don't have a lot of care needs, or you have much higher care needs, or your care needs increase over a few years, your rent will stay pretty much the same. With some communities have care levels so that you're only paying for the care that you actually need. Um, there, in those communities, you will have a base rent. It'll be a little bit lower than the all-inclusive, say 3,000 to 6,000, but then you will pay for your care plan or your care needs, and that can range a lot. If you don't have many care needs, your rent will be much lower than all inclusive. Um, but if you have a health downturn or a disease progresses, your rent will eventually end up being much higher. So some people, it would benefit to have be in the care level sort of community. Other people, it would benefit to be in an all-inclusive sort of situation. For I mentioned continuum of care retirement communities before, and again, you must move into those communities as independent. They will not generally not accept you as at the assisted living level. Um, and but the benefit of a CCRC is that you will be paying the same or only slightly higher rent um, and as independent living, and so it'll work out to be much cheaper than just moving into a specific assisted living place, either all inclusive or with care levels. Um, um, and a buy-in model isn't very common, and you don't have government assistance. Medicaid does not pay for assisted living, um, but you can use VA, that aid and attendance VA benefits for assisted living. Memory care. Um, Memory care is a type of assisted living, but it has more staff and it involves specialized training to deal with those folks who are living with dementia. Almost always, memory care is all inclusive. Um, Things change so much with folks who are experiencing dementia. Um, their care needs may vary from day to day or week to week. Um, so most people can stay in memory care through to a high level of care when the disease progresses. They will need more and more assistance. But at with the most advanced levels of dementia, there may be need to move to a skilled nursing facility. Um, Assisted living, memory care places are usually a secured building or a wing, um, almost always with some sort of outside space, whether it's a patio or a balcony or a courtyard. Um, and in the St. Louis area, there are also some small home models where they're set up to look like a house, and there's maybe a dozen to 15 people with little apartments in the home and a little living room and stuff like that. And it's meant to uh, resemble a home environment. How long do people usually stay in a memory care situation? Um, People move into memory care from home or assisted living when they have moderate to more advanced levels of dementia, and the caregivers in assisted living or at home cannot take care of them anymore safely. And so memory care often may only um, be required for 2 to 3 years, but it is a disease, and every person experiences um, diseases like this differently. And some people um, uh, do well in a memory care unit, and they can be there for as long as a decade. Again, almost all memory care units that aren't CRCCs they will be all inclusive. And in and around St. Louis, the average rent is $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Um, Almost usually they are just studio apartments. Um, to help families out, there are um, some shared suites where you have your own the resident has their own bedroom, but they may have a small common area and a bathroom that is shared, a common area with some cupboards and stuff like that. um, or there's some communities that will have people sharing a room with a divider, um, and there's a little less privacy, but the cost is a little more affordable. um, Care levels, like I said, are rare. There's a few communities that might have a much higher upcharge when people are in very, very advanced stages of dementia where they cannot they are unable to move, are having trouble eating, understanding how to use a fork, those sorts of things. And there might be an upcharge for that. Um, Again, CRCC, you must have moved in as independent. You can't just go to places like Evertrue or um, Friendship Village directly into their memory care unit, or it's extremely rare. And again, the buy-in model isn't generally used for memory care places because the buy-ins assume that you're going to be there for quite a long time. There isn't exactly government assistance for memory care, um, except for the VA benefits, but some of these skilled nursing communities will have um, memory care dedicated wings or um, uh, secure accessed um, wards so that folks with dementia and are on Medicaid um, can get the care that they need. And then moving on to skilled nursing, sometimes called long-term care, sometimes called SNF, a skilled nursing facility. Um, those that is for people who need periodic medical and non-medical care throughout the day. They have a higher care need than assisted living. It's approaching hospital level care, not exactly. Um, and again, this has even higher staffing levels than assisted living, and so it has the higher price tag. Medicaid in Missouri will only pay for shared rooms in skilled nursing facilities. So if you, um, need to go on Medicaid because of stroke or dementia or whatever, they will have you in a shared room. That's what Missouri, the state of Missouri will pay for. You pay what you can pay, and then the state of Missouri will pay the rest to ensure you have a bed in that um, facility. And it, again, I will say you need to plan ahead. Medicaid is a complicated application process. There's a lot of financial questions that need to be sorted out many years in advance. And um, there, there are ways to make sure you get the best situation possible. Medicaid is not something that's feasible to manage in an emergency. Skilled nursing, most people stay a few weeks to a few years, but there are situations where people will stay in long-term care, like if they are a healthy individual but have had a stroke or something like that, they may need long-term care for longer than a few years. If you are going to try to private pay um, skilled nursing, and obviously some of the better communities would prefer, will only take private pay. They are almost always quoted as a daily rate, which is different than other um, senior communities because it's parallel between um, whether you're in skilled nursing for rehab for a few days or you need it for months to years. There may be some add-ons onto that daily rate if you need specialized services or need incontinence supplies or certain things like that. Um, but on average, the monthly rate for skilled nursing around here in St. Louis is 8,500, which tends to be a shared room, um, to up to $13,000 a month. Um, it's very common to see $9,000 to $10,000 as kind of a middle of the road sort of price tag for private paying skilled nursing. And again, like I said, Medicaid will pay for skilled nursing care, even if you only need assisted living, but you are financially strapped, you will need to be in a skilled nursing facility. So, some of the other options that people might try to use that don't involve senior living. And that, it's important to think about those costs because you may be like, I don't want senior living. I'm going to try this other option. One is to have somebody come into your home, whether it's home care, which means ha having somebody help you manage uh, so that you can stay at your home, whether it's cooking, cleaning, errands, laundry, or just having companionship while one, uh, you know, um, that a caregiver can't be with somebody, that's less specialized care and that tends to be cheaper. But some people may need home health, where it is home help plus um, some sort of level of um, medical nursing, whether it's wound care or taking certain drugs, um, you know, um, getting help that like what you would get from a nurse when you're in the hospital. These rate you usually pay an hourly rate. And it varies by scheduled hours. If you just need a few hours, you might pay more than if you were getting a few dozen, asking for a caregiver to be in the home for many dozens of hours a month or a week. Many of the home care agencies will require a minimum visit length because they have to make sure that it's worth the time for a caregiver to drive a half an hour or more to your house, help you out, and then commute all the way home. You know, it may not be worth it for somebody to drive an hour each way and then only get paid for an hour. Home help varies a lot, again, depending on how much you're requesting and what level of care you're asking for. But a common range would be $27 to $55 an hour in the St. Louis region. So to kind of help you compare with senior living and other options, if you're just having um, a you know somebody come in once a week for 4 hours, that might work out to about $800 a month. If you're having somebody come in daily, you have a spouse that has to be outside the home, or a caregiver needs to go to work, um, um, that might be $3,300 a month, give or take. But if you wanted somebody there in the home 24/7, you might be paying in the neighborhood of $1,800 a month. So, you can already see that, sometimes senior living might be a more appropriate option in terms of finances. So, we also need to talk about staying at home. How expensive is that? It is about money, and you need to work out a budget, and I will kind of talk through that in a second. But it's also about how much time you're spending trying to maintain a house. Um, is staying at home healthier in terms of your physical or mental health? Um, you know, is your home set up to be safe for somebody who's has reduced mobility, like having laundry down in the basement, down a scary set of stairs? Or some people need to worry about the burden on their caregiver, whether it's a spouse or a family member who's coming in. So have a plan. Think about what you're spending now and what level you might consider switching over to senior living. So yeah, how do you maintain independence? That's what a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about when they are getting older. And yeah, for a lot of people, that may involve staying at home. But for other people, it may involve moving to a senior community and getting the support they need, whether it's safety, um, being around other people, or moving into an assisted living place may allow them to live longer, um, although with a changed and less familiar sense of independence. So I went, I of course used AI because it's 2025, 2026. Um, and I had AI come up with average monthly costs for different aspects of staying in your home. This is an average. Some people may be well below these averages. They have, um, they, uh, um, their costs may be much lower, their house may be much smaller, but also some people may be well above these monthly averages. But how much are you paying for housing and maintaining your house? I just had a friend who got hit with a $20,000 plumbing bill suddenly. Even if you've paid off your house, there's still costs about uh, having a physical house. Um, you're you need to think about how much you're paying for food, insurance, property taxes, the various utilities that you pay, which may be all covered by moving into a senior community. And then, are you still maintaining a car and driving? Car payments, insurance, maintenance may all be costs that maybe you can go without by moving into a senior community. And then there's some of those other costs like entertainment. And so the overall, AI generated budget may be between 27 to $6,700 a month. So just something to uh, try to use to wrap your brain around. But again, your costs may be quite different. So here's a cost comparison graphic that may help some of y'all. So again, I moved over the just living in an apartment or a home um, price. Um, what about independent living? You're move into an independent living community. Say you get a modest to moderate one bedroom apartment that costs $3,500, and then you need um, additional money to maintain your car, for incidentals like your food, and um, going out with your friends, and you still have to pay for your healthcare or whatever. So maybe that will work out to $4,500. That may be similar to what you're paying living at home, maybe cheaper, maybe much more expensive. Depends on the individual and their situation. Let's say you're living at home and you're paying $3,500 a month on average to stay in, you know, your house or your apartment, and then you need some home help. You're like, I need a little help. I can't do all the laundry. I need, someone to come in and help me out, whether it's for a short time or for because you had a really bad flu or something, or maybe you're like, my arthritis is getting bad, and this may be an ongoing thing. It may be very similar to independent living. Let's say it's $4,500. But let's say you're living at home and you need a lot more help, and it needs to be more medical associated. You need a nurse to come in periodically, multiple times a week. That could run up to $1,100, and that's much more expensive than if you were to move into an assisted living place. Um, so the next line is assisted living. Let's say you get again, a small to medium, moderate size one bedroom apartment. Say you're paying 5,750 a month, and maybe you have really low incidentals. I probably should have included um, your Medicare payments in there. So the 6,000 may be a little low. Um, but moving into assisted living might be quite a bit cheaper than trying to get skilled nursing in your home. Again, as a comparison, memory care, if you're willing or able to share a bathroom, it might only cost five to $6,000 a month. But if you're wanting a private room, it might be $8,500 a month. Um, and so, um, if you have somebody with dementia in your house, or you're looking at that diagnosis, and you're having somebody come in at some point, the more care you need coming into your house, it may be more cost effective to um, utilize a memory care um, um, situation. And then again, skilled nursing can be quite expensive, and I'm giving $10,000 as kind of a fair average price to pay for private skilled nursing in the St. Louis area. So I'm going to go through some scenarios um, so that we can kind of compare costs and talk through some decision making that might help you out. So, what if you're doing fine? You're still pretty independent, but maybe you're slowing down a little bit, kind of normal aging after the age of 70. That's something most people will have to kind of think through. Um, there may be similar costs between staying at home versus independent living. And again, it completely depends on your budget and your housing situation. Um, Something to consider is delaying too long might rule out the opportunity for you to choose to use a continuum of care retirement community. Um, and, you know, uh, are you healthier at home, or would you be healthier in a um, senior living situation? For all of the communities, they will assess new residents for um, their health, just to make sure that they can um, stay in that community, whether it's independent, assisted, or memory care, whether that's appropriate, and the community has enough staff to take care of folks. Um, Also, people need to consider is socialization, being around people, or the safety of not having to go up and down stairs, having grab bars, having um, showers with benches and stuff like that. Is that a better situation, which you would find in a senior community versus what you have in your home? And you may not want or be able to retrofit your house to be a little more senior friendly. So there's cost versus quality of life when you're thinking about senior living. Now, let's say you're having a little bit more trouble getting around, or you're concerned about your stability and potentially having a fall. Um, you know, if you're staying at home, you may need to have help, whether you're retrofitting your house to be more accessible, whether you are having somebody come in to help you out, or just check in on you to make sure you're um, able to move around that morning. That might involve cost in addition to peace of mind. Independent living with some additional help might be an option. It may be cheaper, it may be more expensive for you, but it may be um, an option that may make sense for you. And um, if you have a higher care need, um, do you need to consider that you may need assisted living? Another scenario that a lot of my clients have to address is there are memory issues appearing. More than 10% of seniors currently 65 plus have some sort of dementia. Um, the Alzheimer's Association just came up with a statistic that women um, 70 plus, 1 in 5 will eventually need to will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So it's something to consider. Not everybody will need memory care, but um, it is a common situation that um, seniors and families have to address. Um, One thing to remember that just because you've been diagnosed with some form, one of the four major forms of dementia, um, if you move into a senior community, it does not have to be directly into a memory care area. A lot of people can start out in assisted living where you just need a little more help um, and you get your meals sorted out. Um, and memory care is for somebody who um, needs specialized care, um, cannot find their way between their apartment and the dining room and find the different activity areas. Um, so just be aware that it just dementia does not always equal memory care. Um, there's a burden on caregivers and spouse for staying at home. It may be appropriate for some people, but it may be difficult for other people, especially if a caregiver is still working, managing kids, and has other responsibilities. It's when somebody with dementia is wandering, needs a lot more reminders to take care of themselves, like bathing and stuff like that. Um, that they would need a memory care unit. And a memory care unit will often be cheaper than having somebody in for 8+ hours a day. So if someone you care about or yourself needs very high level of care, um, a community will probably be more budget friendly than having at-home care, especially that nursing care. Um, some people with high care needs may still qualify for assisted living, particularly if the community has an ICF or an intermediate care facility license. There's three of them in the St. Louis region. They can manage um, very close to skilled nursing care. Um, but for some people with certain conditions, they may have to select a skilled nursing facility. There are differences in costs. Assisted living, even an ICF, will be much more budget friendly than a full skilled nursing facility. And again, Medicaid may be some people's only option in order to access skilled nursing care when they have high care needs. So I'm going to cover real quick income level. So certain people, um, will fall into certain buckets, and that will kind of dictate what decisions they can or cannot make. If somebody is low income, I'm throwing out the number less than $3,000 a month in terms of um, monthly income. And they have little savings or almost no assets, um, they can potentially move into a very basic, not a resort level sort of independent living place, or they may consider at the much lower end of income, they may qualify for a senior HUD housing option. If they're choosing to stay at home and they have a non-spouse caregiver and they're on Medicaid, they may be able to get that non-spouse caregiver paid to help take care of them. do their laundry, bathe them, that sort of thing. So that's something to think about and consider. If you need a high level of care, that will always mean skilled nursing. So at very low income, you can either do HUD housing, stay at home, or Medicaid bed. And if you need to go down the Medicaid route, be prepared. Even folks with low um, resources need um, help planning for this potential eventuality. If you, on the other end of the scale, if you are high income, high net worth, you have more than $7,000 coming in per month, and you have significant savings or assets like a home or whatever. That's many thousand, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets. You're going to have pretty much access to all the choices that I've already talked about. So um, it's what I really want to talk about is those folks in the middle, because those are folks who need to really think about. So if you have monthly income over $3,000, you have some assets, maybe your house isn't, you know, high end, but you have to have a plan, and maybe you need a little luck. A significant health downturn will really cause problems. If you have low or few care needs, you can stay at home, you can choose independent living, maybe have a little home help. That's all feasible and within your budget, and that's no problem. It's when you need assistance, um, or you have um, mild to significant health needs, staying at home with help, assisted living, or memory care will rise above your monthly income and will start to eat into your assets. So you need a plan, and this may um, cause you to worry about outliving your money and assets. Um, or if you suddenly need skilled nursing going forward, you may need to be planning for um, if you need to take advantage of Medicaid and getting a bed in a Medicaid space. For middle income people, there are some ways to extend their money. High income folks will probably already have taken advantage of this, but you can buy long-term care insurance. It is more cost effective to have done it when you're younger, as in middle age, 40s, 50s. Um, you can extend your money by being very diligent about your health and wellness. The less care you need, the less chance you're going to suffer from um, heart problems, arthritis, dementia. It will help you. It really will help your wealth last longer. You might consider the continuum of care retirement community option or a buy-in to lock in. Some of them will lock in a lower rent with either no or very small monthly, yearly rent increases, and then you can be investing um, that extra money um, um, to provide for some point when you may need like skilled nursing. You should also prepare for the Medicaid option. You you should have an estate plan if you're middle income for sure. Think about division of assets if you're married. Consider um, how and when you might use a reverse mortgage if you own your house, because it's insured and it's a tax-friendly line of credit against the assets in your home, and it can help um, divide assets if your financial person knows what they're doing. And definitely, like Gail and I keep saying, don't wait for that urgent need because it will cost you in the long term. I've put together um, a worksheet to help you work through these situations. You know, the worksheet has the different um, monthly costs you might have, and then the middle column is how much you currently pay or plan to pay in a few years staying at home, and then you can do on the right hand column um, what might going to an independent living cost versus an assisted living cost versus um, memory care versus skilled nursing. And you can kind of talk through that, you know, and you can take it to an advisor, whether it is a formal financial advisor, whether it's your cousin who knows about money, or your son, your daughter, your spouse, and you can think through that and kind of make decisions. Hey, you know, at some point this may make financial or personal sense to consider senior living. I can get You can either contact me or I will send this to Aging Advantage, and they can get you this this worksheet if you would like to work on that. So, I know this is daunting, but like we keep saying, it's best to have a plan and get help from people who you trust, whether they're professionals or your loved ones. Um, Understand how much it is to stay home. Um, I know we're conditioned to say that's the default and we'll always stay at home, but you know, have a plan. Um, Many folks need additional help and resources, whether it's from me with talking about senior living, or another person who does what I do in the St. Louis region, or financial, um, um, legal, or insurance folks. And again, delaying a move or not having made a decision may cost you money and options at some point. And another suggestion is put your plan into writing for your loved one, or and hopefully you already have a power of attorney sorted out, and review it periodically because things change, prices change, your financial situation changes, your power of attorney may change periodically because of marriage or illness or whatever. So I hope this helps. I hope this is more is a better situation for you to plan versus hopefully it doesn't scare you too much. But again, my name is Chet Cain with Oasis Senior Advisors St. Louis, and let me know if I can help you in any way through this decision-making process.
Thanks, Chad. That's really interesting. And I just had a couple other comments or questions, but
Sure.
you mentioned about doing it on your own can cost a lot, which I totally agree. And you said do your homework. And um, but I know further in your presentation, you kept saying, you know, check with, professionals or people you trust and what have you. But
Mhm.
I've just noticed a lot of times when people are doing their homework, they're looking up things on the internet or they're looking up and doesn't, it, a lot of times it's not applicable things. They're comparing apples and oranges or they're looking at other states and stuff like that.
Yep,
So
100.
I think it was a really important point about, checking with people that really know. Because a lot of times with what I do, I have, people say, well, my hairdresser told me, or even the personal bankers or what have you. And,
Yep.
or they say what worked with their family and they're giving them advice, but it doesn't necessarily apply because they don't know your entire situation.
Oh, 100%. The coasts, the prices I gave are kind of m middle of the road. St. Louis is, you know, not the cheapest place to retire, but it's much cheaper than the New York area or California or whatever. So, yeah. And yeah, getting some advice is better than no advice. The internet is sometimes not your friend. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of senior communities, their websites aren't that helpful. Um, so um, yeah, getting advice from somebody is better than nothing, but getting advice from somebody who really knows, who has either done it professionally or done it personally and knows all the pitfalls can help you for sure.
Yeah. And you had talked about one thing, and in terms of assisted living having, you know, no options in Missouri to help pay, but
Mhm.
it's a slight option, but if people are qualified for Medicaid, they can get the cash grant, which is just giving them basically is really close to $300 extra to pay towards that assisted living. If it's a particular assisted living that has a Medicaid, that Medicaid, it's not necessarily a Medicaid bed like skilled, but it is doing accepting their income plus the Medicaid cash grant. So it's not for the certain types of assisted livings, but they do have that. And so I know some people go over to the Illinois side, has some help over there, but this
Right.
cash grant of the $300, there's a lot of people that are I wouldn't say a lot, but there's quite a few of the different assisted livings that will have you pay, your over your income for a certain period of time, but then they'll accept your income in the cash grant. So it's important to figure out which of those facilities, will be able to do that cash grant if you're not having funds. Um, I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but a lot of the majority of the assisted livings don't do that.
Correct. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, and an important thing that you were, I think making the point about in terms of memory care and that the assisted livings had it. And then you mentioned about, skilled nursing has that designation as well in some ways. But I find that a lot of people get really tied up on, oh, I have to have memory care. And you're like, are you needing assisted or you needed skilled? So they're instead of figuring out if they could handle themselves in assisted living or if they're needing skilled, they're focused on that memory care, because of all the advertising and what have you. So
Right.
I think that's another point that you were kind of making it that there is these memory care places, but they're still assisted versus the skilled. And you kind of talked about that, but I think
Mhm.
it's an real important disting distinguishing factor of what level of care are you needing, even if you have memory issues. Because you
Right.
mentioned, like, and some people have some memory issues or dementia, and they need to have skilled nursing, but they don't necessarily need the memory care, like lockdown unit type thing. So,
Yeah. If you're not wandering and stuff like that, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
applicable. Yeah.
And that can be the same in assisted living as well, I think. But people
100.
just, they see all these commercials or these signs and they think, oh, that's very specific, which it is a specific care, but it's not, necessarily that which you're looking at assisted or skilled. And
Right.
and then your points that you were making at the end, I think, are super important about what is your actual cost of being at home. Like people, a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, it's cheaper because I don't have a house payment or I don't have this. And then if you're looking at, three, four, five, six, however many thousands of dollars to live in a place. But if you look at all the costs like that you had on your worksheet and, and then maybe the extra costs of, I didn't see if it was on the worksheet. I'm just thinking of like the lawn mowing,
Oh, yeah.
all the extra things that maybe you used to do yourself that you're, paying like a housekeeper and home care and,
Yep.
maybe you're getting your groceries delivered or you're still having your cost of food, which a lot of these places, the cost of the food is, included. And so adding up all those things, um, is an important thing to think about.
Yep. I've had a number of clients who were like, they just don't want to, they can't maintain the outside of their house anymore, and they don't want to deal with replacing a hot water heater and um, getting a new roof and dealing with the contractor and stuff like that. It's just that simplicity of life can be what is the determining factor where somebody was like, senior living may be an option for me. Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, you know, and that's where it's important to go and pre-plan and look, because I think we have this pictures in our mind of, I don't know, like when I was young, when you're a Girl Scout going to these places and taking cookies and stuff. The places are very different, and a lot of the senior living places are extremely different than skilled. And then
Yep.
possibly if people are in them and not having that pressure that you were just talking about and kind of focusing on their health and their nutrition, then maybe they're avoiding those next levels of care, longer per se or
Exactly.
but we get that emotional attachment. Everybody, wants to be in their home,
Mhm.
but a lot of independence, it is, that community because social isolation plays like a huge part in our mental health.
True. Yeah, it's stress. It affects your body. It affects your likelihood to develop dementia, all of those sorts of things. And I had a conversation with a community person, and it's not about having to sit down and have long conversations with every resident and stuff like that. She made the point that one resident was very withdrawn, would just sit in the lobby, read a book. Um,
And
but when she talked to him, he knew, all kinds of stuff that was going on in the community because he overheard conversations and he was around people.
mhm.
That is socialization and connection, even if, yeah, you're not, sitting down and gossiping and doing all, the more stereotypical, um, you know, uh, connecting.
Yeah.
It's
Well, some people are more introverted anyways, and but being introverted and then sitting home and not ever seeing anything or having interaction is a little bit different. So they,
Yep.
you know, they're they're there, they're kind of here in the environment, but not necessarily interacting.
Yep.
But I think that's an important thing with our with our ARPA talks because people are very much more isolated coming out of the pandemic. It did have a lot of effects, and it's important just to be looking at all these different areas and how that's affected and money is a big concern coming out of that pandemic too. And so people do get really worried and so then they just avoid it instead of planning like you're
Yeah,
talking about.
exactly. Yeah, I gave this talk to shed light on it, not to scare you away. I have clients who I will take to view senior living places, and they are on a longer runway. They're like, in a few years, and that's fine. Um, it's good to have a plan in case something changes, or some of these places will have wait lists, especially for certain layouts, or if you want the view of, a balcony or something like that, you may need to put yourself on a wait list for 1 to 2 years. And on a wait list, you can always say, I'm not ready yet.
Mhm.
But, you have that flexibility to be like, okay, no, something happened. The house is, yeah, too much. I don't feel good. I want to move now. And
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even as much the wait list, but going to these different places, you know, some of them just aren't for you, and you're seeing that versus the ones that like even if you're like, oh, I don't think I want it, but I could tolerate this one. I don't think I could tolerate that. When you're in an emergency, you're not going to look at it. And
No.
so if you at least have a couple things in mind or a couple features, like if you know, well, I like this feature and this feature, but I don't like this feature. And so that if there's an emergency, at least you're telling your kids or whoever's helping you that, I really like these things, or I liked this place, not this place, and you're not
Right.
ending up. So
Yeah.
it's easier to go look and when you're feeling okay and stuff than and even if you're not going to make a decision, but you know what you do or don't like.
Yep,
So,
100%. You may be very concerned about the food, or you may like certain activities. You're like, oh, I like to play billiards or whatever, or you like to take walks, and or you like to garden, and certain communities will be more set up to for you to click into it. And um a lot of the clients I take, they are surprised how open and willing to talk, and they will in the elevator will say, oh, this is this is why this is a great place. I should have done this a long time ago.
you
um
hear that often.
yes, 100%. And the uh, the the clients kind of were expecting, I had to move here. But when a lot of seniors move into senior communities, they're like, this is better, you
Yeah,
know. But it depends on the personality. It's
yeah,
not for everybody, but you know, it's surprising the number of people who are like, yeah, this kind of works for me.
yeah. I often hear, well, what was I waiting for? Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah. Well, I do appreciate your helping us out today and doing this presentation for everybody. And not sure when our next one is, but always watch out on the Facebook Live. And then they're later moved to and you can point that out if you are wanting to point someone to your presentation, but they're moved to the Aging Advantage YouTube channel. So they're there forever after that.
Yep.
So.
Excellent.
Okay. Well,